Hey there, Stampers. Happy Friday. This is Sherry Ross. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Alberta, Canada. And I am excited to be here today to share three beautiful cards using Fun Bundle from the annual Stampin' Up! Catalog. Actually, it's a suite of products, not a bundle. And it is called the Beautiful Gallery Suite. And you can find that on find the page here. Okay, you can find some samples on pages 52 and 53. I love the vintage feel of this. It kind of has like a uh, art gallery kind of feel to it. And then it is a mega suite. So there are two bundles, so stamps and dies that coordinate. There's a beautiful 6x6 DSP, which I'll share with you in a moment. There's an embossing folder, some great gems, and some ribbon. So, and this is one of the products that you can take advantage of during this month's promotion, which is the buy one, get one 50% off all suites and suite product promotion. So for the month of June 2025, um, when you purchase products from that are part of a suite. So a suite is basically a collection. So just like I showed you, there's always a DSP that goes with it. There's a bundle, and then sometimes there's embellishments or embossing folders that go with it. Then when you purchase any either entire suite, you can get another suite for 50% off. And that second suite will be the lesser of the two in cost. Or you can purchase products from suites. So if you don't necessarily want an entire suite, maybe you want the bundle from one suite and the DSP from another suite. You can purchase the bundle and get the DSP for 50% off. Okay, so that's how that promotion works. And that goes until June 30th of this year. All right, so welcome this morning. Now, before I jump into the project, um, I just want to make sure they're doing some work outside of our house, and I've got my noise canceling earbuds in, so it's not too bad for me. I just want to make sure that you guys can't hear it, because I have my window open and I can always close my window if it's too noisy. So just post in the chat if you find that you can hear that noise or if the noise is overwhelming. Okay. All right. So let me share what is part of that collection here. So first of all, we've got the first bundle, which is the Gallery Blooms bundle. So it's beautiful floral images, and then some coordinating dies, and then some complementary dies as well. And then there's this fabulous frame here. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, and then we've got, the Beautiful Motifs bundle, which has a ton of greetings. There's a couple images in it, and then these dies here. And both sets complement each other beautifully. Then there is this fabulous embossing folder, which we're going to use today. Actually, we're going to use all of these products today. And then the DSP. So I'm just going to do a quick flip through of the DSP. It is so pretty. So there's some sceneries and then floral images. So very, like I said, art gallery type imagery. Like this one you could cut out with that frame. So pretty. And this is actually the collection that Laura and I are using for this month's class to go. And I will share a peek at three of those 6 cards that we'll be making in class at the end, towards the end of this video. So then the back sides are just a little bit more, simple patterns. So pretty. So pretty. All right. So that is what is included in the collection. As of this morning, when I checked stock before I went live, everything is still available. So you can purchase the entire suite or you can purchase bits and pieces from it. Okay, so let's set some of this stuff aside here. We're going to need those. And we're going to need that. And I've got the DSP that I need. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, this first card, I'm going to use this pattern paper here. So this card would work with it would work with any of the pattern papers, but especially with the scene pattern papers. So any of the scenic ones. And we are going to cut it at 5 1/4. So, and I'm going to cut 5 1/4 off of the sky part. Now, this first card design is a card design that I go to with any of these papers. I usually create a version of this card. Okay. And then I'm going to rotate it and I'm going to cut it at 1 3/16. So each one of these ticks on the Stampin' Up! Trimmer is a 16th of an inch. So 1 2 3. So I found my one and I'm going to do 1 3/16. And I'm going to do that. 1 2 3. I'm going to do that 3 times in a row because I want to keep my seam together. Okay, like that. And we'll set these three aside. This piece we're going to save. We're going to use this on the second card. This piece I'm going to trim down to 4 inches so I can put it on the inside. So, and this piece I'm not going to end up using. So that is how we're going to cut the pattern papers for our first card. Now we're going to take our snips and we're going to add a little bit of texture here. So I'm going to take my snips and I'm going to distress around the edges. Now I love to do this. It's a simple way to add texture to your projects. I feel like it really steps up your cards and it doesn't require any special tools. Everybody's got a pair of scissors. You're a paper crafter. You probably have many pairs of scissors. So we're just going to distress around the edges here. And I love the muted colors in this paper pack. So, and one of these colors is, well, there's a couple of our new in colors in this collection. Secret Sea is the dark blue that's in the collection. And I always forget the name of Cloud Cover is another one. So Cloud Cover is one of the actually we're using both of those on this card. But I love Cloud Cover. Okay, so we've got our 3 pieces. Now we're going to bring in the rest of the supplies that we need. So I've got a cloud cover card base. What do you guys think of the new in colors this year? I love them. And I love how well Secret Sea goes with each one of the colors. It just works beautifully. So these are going to go on the front panel. So like I said, this is a card design that I go to often with this type of paper. So sometimes I'll do it vertically, sometimes I'll do it up a landscape card. It just depends. Sometimes I have 3 strips, sometimes I have more. So I'm going to take this first one and I'm going to add adhesive to it. I'm just using some multi-purpose glue, just put into I'm using my grid here, my glass mat to try to find the center. So I just put it into a fine tipped bottle that I purchased on Amazon. And I feel like I have a little bit more control. And you know how sometimes when you use liquid glue, you get, that crinkled feel, like it's almost you've added too much like liquid to your project. And I don't know, it just feels stiff and bulky. If you add a lot of glue, I find that this nozzle is just perfect for that. It controls the amount of glue that I put on here. And you don't need a lot of multi-purpose glue. The glue is so good. All right, so now we've put our seam together. Now we're going to take this white strip and we're going to stamp on it. So I am going to use the greeting Thinking of You from the Beautiful Motif stamp set. So this one here, you could also you could use any of these 4. You just want something that's a little bit longer and narrower. And I'm going to use some Secret Sea ink. And we're going to stamp it closer to the right-hand side. Right. Right. And then I've got a piece of Lost Lagoon, which is Lost Lagoon is one of the colors in here. And I'm going to adhere this to the back just to bring in another color. So I'll just add a strip of multi-purpose glue on here and then add my white layer on top of that so that I've got about an eighth of an inch. And then I can trim this excess white. And then this is going to go on here using dimensionals. All right. Okay, so then we're going to pop this on here. Again, I'm going to use the grid on my glass mat. And we'll put it about here. Make sure that that's straight. Okay, and we could leave it like that. It's a nice card. It's simple, but we're going to step it up a little bit. So I have gone ahead and I've die cut from some Mossy Meadow, which is the green that's in here, and another piece of Lost Lagoon, two of these images. So I've got this one here and this one here that I've used from the Gallery Blooms dies. And we're just going to add these on here. Now, because this is raised, I am going to put a little piece of a dimensional. Just going to cut a couple little strips from around the edges and just right on here and here. I'm going to add some dimensionals and that will just kind of even that up with this raised bit. And then I'll just put a little bit of liquid glue on here. And I'll pop that on there like that. And then we're going to add this piece. And this one, I'm just going to use liquid glue because it's going to sit kind of right on top of that Mossy Meadow leaf. Just like that. Now, again, we could stop here, but we're going to step it up just a little bit more. And I am going to take some of the ribbon. So I've got a 10-inch length of this basic beige. What is this called? Basic beige classic ribbon, which is a beautiful ribbon. I love the color basic beige. I've been using it a ton lately, and it works perfectly as a neutral with this collection. So I could have taken this white and switched it out for basic beige and my inside layer as basic beige as well. But I chose to use white for this particular card. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken a piece of this ribbon and I've used my ribbon scissors and I've just cut off this outside layer. Hopefully this is noticeable here. So this outside layer so that I can separate the fibers. So I did that all along the 10-inch length of this ribbon. And now I'm going to pull out several fibers. So let's see. And some ribbons, this comes out beautifully, and some takes a little bit more effort. I find that this one does require a little bit more effort. So I've probably got about 6 fibers here. And sometimes you can also pull straight out. And I know this is going to cause me difficulty. It always does when I'm on video, right? And you don't want to pull too hard because you don't want to break the fibers. So I'm just pulling it out and kind of working my way down. You can also, I mean, that's really pretty as well, especially because this has a vintage feel. You could pull some of those fibers and create kind of like a crinkled ribbon. There we go. All right. So now I've got about 6 layers or 6 fibers from that ribbon, and I'm kind of pinching them together and tying a bow. So I love linen thread, baker's twine, and I love doing this. I I am big on using fibers and texture on my cards. Um, and if I want to add a bow, when you're using a ribbon that is this thick, oftentimes that will add quite a bit of bulk to your card, which I don't mind if I'm hand delivering, but I don't want to have to pay extra postage to send off my cards. Postage here in Canada is crazy expensive as it is. Um, and I still want to be able to. send cards, but not have them cost a fortune. So I try to come up with solutions where there's not as much bulk. And this is a great way to add that fiber. Actually, I'm going to tweak these just a little bit. So you can see when I'm pulling the fibers, I'm trying to grab all of the fibers and I'm holding the center knot to keep it nice and tight. And I've got one bow here that's a little bit, or one loop that's a little bit bigger than the rest. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Okay, we're just going to go with it. And then I like to use multi-purpose glue when I stick this on rather than a glue dot because I find that sometimes these fibers are all over the place. And if they happen to catch on the mini glue dot, then it's easy to pull your bow. There we go. And then we'll just take our snips. Actually, we're going to use our ribbon scissors for this. And I'm just going to trim these ends so they're not quite as long. Oh, and now look, see, it's stuck to my finger. There we go. Okay. And there is our card. Now we could turn around and step this up if we wanted to add some of our pressed flower motifs. So let's do that as well. So we'll grab a big one and a little one, just add that on there. And there is the outside of our card done. For the inside, I'm just simply going to take this top bit that I cut off and just add this to the top of this card. And you could choose one of the flower images from the other stamp set and stamp a flower on the inside here. But because we're not really using a whole lot of flowers, I mean, I guess we've got this little sprig here. I just chose to keep this as is on the inside. And I think this would make a great masculine card. And there we go. So there is card number one, a simple design, a great one that you could replicate over and over and over. Um, Using any of our scenic patterns. And over the years, we've had several different scenic type patterns. Okay. All right. So I'm going to set that aside and we'll move on to the next card. Okay. The next one, we are going to use this leftover piece. So one of the things that I try to do when I create my cards is I try to use up my pattern paper because because I'm an active Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I often get rid of anything that retires. So I try to use up as much as I can while it's still current. So we had this piece left over, and I didn't want to do a rectangle. I wanted to do something different. So I decided to pull out some circle punches, which I just realized I forgot to grab. So I will do that right now. I used 2 1/4 and 1 1/2. Those were the circle punches that I've used. And so I'm just going to take my circle punch and line it up so that I get the part of the image that I want. So 2 1/4 and then 1 1/2. And then I'm okay just tossing this. Okay, let's move these out of the way. All right, so now we've got two circles. That goes that way. And we'll bring in the rest of the pieces. So I've pre-done some of these things here. So let me show you what I've done. So again, we're going to use cloud cover as our base. We've got our white piece for the inside. We've got this piece of cloud cover that I've embossed using the Damask Designs embossing folder. And look how pretty that is. It's so pretty. I love this. Now, for all the measurements on today's cards, I will link to the blog post, which will go live shortly after this video. And I will have all of the measurements in that blog post if you want to recreate any of these card designs. And then I've got a Mossy Meadow leaf and a Mossy Meadow sprig. So those came from the dies. So I used the leaf is just this one here from the Gallery Blooms, and then this sprig, or whatever you want to call it, is from the Beautiful Motifs dies. Okay, and we're going to do a bit of stamping. So I'm going to set this aside. I've got a scrap piece of cloud cover. I've got a scrap piece of white. We'll do our greeting first. So again, I'm pulling in some Secret Sea ink, and this time I'm going to use Just a Note, which I love the greeting Just a Note because you could turn it into a birthday card thinking of you, a thank you card. Just you can really turn it into anything. So I really love when stamp sets come with the greeting Just a Note. So I'm just going to stamp that on there. And then I'm going to take this image and stamp it on here. I'm also going to stamp it on the inside of my card. And then I'm going to stamp it on my envelope as well. Okay, so we've done all of our stamping. And I wanted to add just a little bit of something to this. I felt like it was just a little bit too plain. So what I'm going to do is I have just one of these flat blocks that I use for this purpose. It's one of our kits collection blocks. So it comes with, when you purchase a kit, stamping kit from our kits collection, it comes with one of these blocks. And I've got some white ink refill. I'm just going to put a dot on there. And I'm going to use my blender pen, and we'll just make sure it's clean. And I'm just going to pull up the ink refill and just add a little bit of white just at the base of each of these leaves. And I'll bring this up a little closer so that you can see it in a moment. Now, when this dries, it will dry a little bit lighter. It's really subtle when it dries. It's a little bit more noticeable when it's wet. Sorry, I'm adding these to the petals. I think I called them leaves. They're petals. All right. So let me bring that up a little closer. So that's what it looks like. It just adds a little bit of detail to it. You notice that? Okay, and then I'm going to grab a baby wipe and just give my block a wipe. And I'll clean the tip of my blender pen as well. Actually, I don't know which end I use. Let's just clean both. Okay. All right. Now, there is a die that coordinates with this. So in the Gallery Blooms die set, this die will cut that out. So I've gone ahead and done that. So there that is. And we're going to trim this Just a Note down just a little bit. So slide that aside. And we're going to trim it in both directions. I want it to be just a little bit narrower than it is. So we'll do it that way. We'll do it this way. And then we'll trim it this way as well. We're going to leave a little bit more space on the left-hand side. Okay. All right. So now I think we've got all of our pieces. We are going to take this and distress around the edges. Most of the kind of vintagey or outdoorsy kind of cards that I create, I do this technique on. Like I said, I just love this technique. You do have to be careful if your paper is embossed because it does tear easily, but I find that if it does tear, it just adds even more character to it. I embrace it if it tears. Okay, and then we're going to curl up this corner just a little bit. And we're going to do some splattering. Now, what color did I use? We're going to use Secret C. So I'm going to pull out my Secret C Stampin' Blend and my bone folder. And this is how I like to get a nice fine splatter. I'll just take my bone folder and just tap it. I know some people kind of flick the tip, but I don't want to ruin the tips of my markers. So I find it splatters beautifully if you just tap it with your bone folder and you've got this beautiful fine splatter. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining me this morning. Happy Friday. We are playing with the beautiful gallery suite of products today. Okay, so now I'm just going to add some adhesive and be pretty generous with my adhesive just because I'm using an embossed layer. And then this is going to go on here like that. And we can add our inside layer. For this one, I'm not going to add too much adhesive. Add that in there. Okay, now let's decorate our card. So I'm going to start by adding my larger circle. And again, I'm going to be pretty generous with my adhesive because I want this to stick well on top of this embossed layer. And that is going to go right about there. And then this one next. Put that right about there. Okay, and then we're going to add this piece on next. And it's going to go right about here. And then we're going to take this piece, and this piece is going to go on using some dimensionals. So I'll use a full one and then cut one in half. So this is for those of you who are just joining in, this is the second card that I've made. I'll go back and share all three once we're all done. Okay, and then this guy's gonna go like that. Then we're gonna add this green leaf. So I wanted a little bit more green on here. So that's gonna go on here like this. And then we're gonna add our just a note. So we're going to use a little piece of a dimensional on the right-hand side. Let's make sure we've got this going. Yeah. And then we'll add some multi-purpose glue on the left, which is where it will sit over top of this raised portion. Okay. And then we're going to take, again, just like we did on the first card, we're going to take a few fibers from here. I find the hardest part of this is just getting it started. And we're pulling the fibers out. And I think I've come up with a little bit of a glitch. There's one fiber in here that is causing me some grief here. And I don't want to pull too hard because I don't want to break them. There we go. All right. So now we've got our fibers and I'll just tie my bow. You do want to kind of keep them as close together as possible so that it's easier to tie. Okay, and sometimes they just kind of twist around. There we go. That's better. Let's trim this before we stick it on this time. Okay, then we'll just add a little dot of multi-purpose glue right on there. We'll add our bow and then finish it off with some motifs. And there we go. There is card number 2. We've got a matching envelope and then stamped image on the inside. So pretty. And that just used up the leftover piece from card number 1, piece of DSP from card number 1. Okay, let's move on to card number 3. Okay, check my notes here. I think I've cut the DSP for this one that I needed. All right. So here I've used the ribbon in a little bit of a different way. So I took a 5-inch piece of the beige ribbon and I wrapped some linen thread around it and then tied a bow. So that will go on our card. I've got a 2¼ inch white circle that I've cut. And then I've got some scraps of some coral. We're using this particular pattern paper today or for this card. So this piece measures 2 by 4¼ and then this piece is just 5/8 by 4. That's going to go on the inside. I've got my inside layer, so we'll set these 2 pieces aside. And then I've also got our card base for this one is going to be crumb cake, and I've got a layer of crumb cake that has been embossed using the embossing folder. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to stress the stress around the edges. All right. To stress around the edges, we'll fold our card base and we'll add this layer to our card base. Just like that, so that we have a nice even border. And then we're going to add this piece over top. And that's going to go about in the middle. And that's going to go straight across. Okay, so we've got that. All right, now we're going to do some stamping. So I'm going to cover this over. We're going to do a little bit more stamping than we have on the other 2 cards on this card. Let's set these pieces aside. Okay, so first of all, we are going to take some Calypso coral and this image here, and we're going to stamp it on some basic beige, scrap piece of basic beige. Okay, while we've got this out, we're also going to stamp the inside of our card. And we'll do our envelope as well. Yeah, this is one of my favorite sweets as well. I love this sweet. It's so pretty. And it's not my usual style, but I don't know. I just love the art gallery kind of feel to it. So pretty. Okay, so we've got our envelope stamped. We'll set this aside for now. Now we're going to bring in this piece of basic beige. And I'm going to use my embossing buddy because we're going to do some embossing here. Should just give that a rub. That'll get rid of any oils from my fingers or any static that might be on the paper so that our embossing powder does not stick where it shouldn't stick. And we're going to use some Versamark. This is a very dirty and Versamark pad. I think this is my extra one. I got mixed up from my retreat inks. I do have a newer one. Okay, so and we're going to stamp this twice. So I'm just applying a fair bit of pressure just to make sure I get a nice even impression. Then I'm going to rotate it around. It doesn't really matter where you stamp these because we're going to cut them out anyways. But I just rotated it around my cardstock around, and then I'll stamp it again. Okay, and then I'm going to take some white embossing powder. And I think it's time to order some more embossing powder. This is almost gone. Okay, just make sure that I've got that covered. That looks pretty good. I'll just gently tap off the excess, dump that back in there, and then we're going to bring in our heat tool and heat it up. So, and if you aren't familiar with embossing, this the Versamark is a sticky ink, so it will allow the powder to stick to it. And then when you heat it, it kind of melts it into the ink. So it changes it from a powdery look to a more shiny look and really makes that image kind of pop off the page. I love the look of white embossing powder on basic beige. All right. Okay. So now we've embossed it. There is a die that will cut these out. So if you look in the Gallery Blooms die set, this die right here will cut those images out. So I've already gone ahead and I've done that. I try to pre-do as much of this as I can, just so that you guys don't have to watch me do all that menial stuff. And then there is also a die that will cut this out. So I've gone ahead and I've done that as well. Okay, so let's set these pieces aside. All right. So now let's work on the inside of our card first. So I've got this scrap piece of Calypso Coral and this scrap piece of DSP, and I'm just going to add a little bit of blue to the bottom so that I've got that touch of coral. This is going to bring in that color to the inside of the card. I mean, we've got our stamped image, but this will bring in the cardstock. It's kind of fun to come up with creative ways to bring some of the same elements from the outside of your card to the inside. All right. It's going to go on there and we're hanging over the edge just a smidge. So let's trim this. So like I said at the beginning of this video, this is the suite that Laura and I have decided to focus on this month for our class to go. Um, so I believe the deadline to register is June 15th. All the details will go out in an email this morning. Actually, probably already went out. It was scheduled to go out at 10:30 Mountain Time. But you can find all the information on my blog as well. I will go back and link in the description to the blog post where you can find all of that information. The cards are stunning, and I will share a peek at 3 of the 6 cards that we'll be making in class. Okay, so these 2 pieces are gonna go like this, and we're gonna stick them on flat. So again, I'm gonna be generous with my adhesive just because they're going over top of this embossed cardstock. So like that. And like this. And I love the look of mixed neutrals. So we've got crumb cake, we've got basic beige, and then we're also throwing in some white here. Oh, we still need to stamp our grading. Okay, so for a greeting, I'm going to bring in some early espresso ink, and I'm going to use the greeting that says, wishing you love and happiness that lasts a lifetime. And we're going to stamp it on the circle, but a little bit closer to the right. Okay. And then this piece is a little bit too long. We're going to put this across. We're just going to eyeball it, trim it, and we can stick that on there. Just like that. I think that looks like it's in the center. Okay, and then this piece is going to go on using some dimensionals. Going to go in the center. Yep, like that. Isn't that pretty? And then we are going to add this. So I'm going to use a little piece of a dimensional right on this top flower. And then I'll use some liquid glue. Let's pop this piece out. Some liquid glue here. And then this is going to go on here like this. Okay. And then remember I talked about creative ways to use your ribbon. So I shared how you can kind of separate the fibers. So this is another way that you can use your ribbon without adding a lot of bulk. So I just took, like I said, about, I think I mentioned the length, about 5 inches of ribbon, fold it in half and wrap some linen thread around it. So again, that's a little bit less bulky than if you were to tie a bow from the actual ribbon itself. And for this, we're going to use a mini glue dot, which I don't think I pulled out my mini glue dots. So let me grab those. So I'm just going to stick this on here like that. And I'll use my paper piercing tool and pull this off. And we're going to pop this on here like that. Look how pretty that is. And then we'll finish it off using some of our motifs. And one more up here. And there we go. There is card number 3 using this beautiful collection. And we've got a matching envelope. And there is the inside. So, so stunning. It's so easy to create beautiful cards with this collection. I absolutely love it. So there is card number 2. My envelope looks like it's seen better days. And card number 1. We started really simple and then kind of went a little bit more elaborate. So those are the 3 cards that I'm sharing with you today. And then I promised a little peek at this month's class to go cards. So let me slide these out of the way. I will have a full supply list of everything that I used for today's cards in the description below. If you live in Canada, I would love for you to shop from me if you don't already have a demonstrator. Okay, so here is one of the cards. Here is another. And then here's the third one. So those are 3 of the 6 cards that we're making. Laura designs 3 and I designed 3. So those are the 3 that I designed. And the cards are always stunning. I really encourage you to try one of our classes to go if you have not yet tried them. If you live outside of Canada, you can either participate through Laura or you can purchase the tutorial from me. And it's linked in the blog post. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's projects. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again next Friday. Take care.